Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here to introduce our metal-bonded 3-5-on-silicon multi-junction solar cell project that I have been working here in McMaster University with Department of Engineering Physics. Sorry. Next page.
Oh, there you go. There it is. Yeah.
Okay. First, motivation. It's well known that multi-junction solar cells has been a proven way to achieve record high efficiencies. Traditionally, high quality multi-junction solar cells are being fabricated by monolithic growth method. The problem with monolithic growth method is that it has tight constraints on the material selection because it requires the subcell PV materials to have closely matched lattice constants as well as thermal expansion coefficients. These constraints have basically forced people to use germanium or gallium arsenide based substrates for the high quality multi-junction solar cells. So we are here motivated to develop a new method or technique to fabricate multi-junction solar cells. The benefit of such kind of technique would allow us to choose from a much broader range of material, and the benefit could be obvious. For example, if we're allowed to use silicon as a substrate material, we could potentially bring down the cost of overall cell. So here in this talk, I will be introducing an intermediate metal bonding based method. We use this method to fabricate multi-junction solar cells by avoiding growing PV materials directly on lattice-mismatched substrates. Instead, we fabricate high-quality subcells separately, and then we bond them together with intermediate metal. Secondly, I will be introducing an Areal current matching technique, which is a very powerful technique. And we have used this technique to match the subcell short circuit currents for any arbitrary PV material combinations. So I will be showing the IV curves measured from a indium gallium phosphide, indium gallium arsenide silicon triple junction solar cell. And this cell has a 25% efficiency, and we measured it at 1 sun M1.5 G. This figure shows the cell structure. This is a cross profile. It is triple junction cell, and it has a top cell which is in itself is a double junction cell. It's made from indium phosphide and indium gallium arsenide. And this bottom cell is a silicon cell. It's commercially available with a texturized surface. And these two cells are being interconnected by the intermediate metal layers. The patterns of the metal layers are shown here. This top one is being metallized on the back side of this top cell, and this bottom one is metallized on the front side of the bottom cell. We stack these cells together so that these finger-like patterns cross over with each other, so that we do not need to use any alignment technique to get electric interconnection. Light can pass from the top cell to the bottom cell in these unshadowed areas, and we fill these gaps with the transparent epoxy. Now, this is brief for the fabrication process. First, we grow the top in-gap, in-gas double junction cell on a lattice-matched germanium substrate. Then we either remove the substrate by etching it away or do an epitaxial lift-off if you want to recycle the substrate. We get this thin film top cell and fix it on a transparent hand wafer. And then we do the metallizations as according to what I have shown in the previous slide, and apply epoxy on these surfaces. And then we push the top cell tightly, firmly onto the bottom cell by applying enough weight. And then this whole structure is being cured in an oven at 80 degrees C for about 3 hours. So this is a fabrication process. And this is what the cell looks like from a top-down view. And generally, the shadowing, including the intermediate metal layer, shadow loss is about 15%. And we have this optional metal contact directly extended from the intermediate metal so that we can probe the performance of the subcells separately. I'll talk about the current matching. It is well known that in order for multi-junction solar cells work in two-terminal mode to work optimally, we need to have the subcell currents matched with each other. That is to say, we need to have the short circuit current of the top cell equals to the middle cell equals to the bottom cell. Traditionally, this has been done by using proper material combination with the proper band gap combinations. So this actually puts another constraint on the material selection. The problem we are having here is we have an indium gallium phosphide, indium gallium arsenide, and silicon triple junction cell, and their band gaps are not ideally matched for the current matching purpose. Actually, silicon bottom cell is a current limiting cell. And if we just measure the cell performance as is, we wouldn't get as much high efficiency. So what here's how we use the areal current matching idea. We slightly enlarge the area of the bottom cell so that there are some extra active silicon cell area that is exposed to the full spectrum of the light. In this way, we are able to boost up the current from the bottom silicon cell to match that of the top cell. Now this next slide shows the calculated theoretical maximum efficiency from a indium gallium phosphide, indium gallium arsenide silicon triple junction cell in two-terminal mode, and we can see that as we enlarge the area of the bottom cell, we would see an increase in the efficiency until the peak value, which is 47% here. And this is also the current matching point. So beyond this point, if we keep enlarging the silicon area, we will get a reduction in the efficiency. Here we also, just for comparison, we also calculated the theoretical efficiency of a germanium-based triple junction solar cell with identical top cell as the silicon-based triple junction solar cell. And we can see that by using areal current matching, we can actually get a higher efficiency from a silicon-based multi-junction solar cell. So this one more comment about areal current matching is that we have noticed that for any arbitrary PV material combination, as long as the bottom cell is a current limiting cell, we can always have a multi-junction solar cell that is made from these two PV materials to get a higher multi-junction cell efficiency by using areal current matching than any of the single junction cells made separately by these PV materials. For example, the theoretical maximum efficiency for germanium single junction cell is about 32%, and that for a silicon single junction cell is about 30%. But if we use areal current matching, we can get a gallium arsenide and silicon double junction cell with a 37% efficiency. And this could not be achieved without using any current matching technique. So experimentally, it's fairly easy to apply this areal current matching technique. Well, for example, you can use a fixed size aperture and move this aperture around on the cell to adjust the error ratio between the bottom cell and the top cell. This figure is measured data from one of the cells that we fabricated. We can show that as the area ratio changes, the efficiency changes or similar to the fashion of the theoretically calculated values. And we found in this particular cell, we only need a slight extra silicon area to reach a current matching condition. Now this figure shows the IV data, illuminated IV data from one of cells that we made. Now this current IV characteristics is measured at the current matching condition. So black curve is a multi-junction solar cell curve, and this red curve is from the top double junction cell, and this blue curve is from the bottom silicon cell. And here it shows the areal configuration for this specific cell. Now it has a efficiency of 25.5% measured in our optical lab. And we noticed that the open circuit voltage of the multi-junction solar cell has a contribution of 2.23 from the top to double junction cell and another 0.52 volt from the bottom cell. So the overall open circuit voltage is 2.74 volt. And another thing to notice is that the fill factor is 79%. So this is a fairly good fill factor. That means that we have acceptably low series resistance from this intermediate metal layer. Now this figure is to show that this the IV characteristics measured from the top thin film cell before and after it's been integrated into the multi-junction solar cell. And I just wanted to show that there's almost a negligible degradation to the thin film cell. That means that this process is a non-destructive process. And this is important because we want to keep the quality of the subcells. And this figure shows the thermal reliability of the multi-junction solar cell. Because we noticed that the thermal expansion coefficients for the top cell material and bottom cell material is quite large. So we want to see if this cell can stand some severe thermal conditions, and we can show that after 300 thermal cycles between 25 degrees C and 110 degrees C, we see a little bit of degradation, but generally I think we can still conclude from the data that the cell can stand fairly severe environmental conditions. This table is a summary of the efficiency data comparing the efficiency that we got from this work with some of the other relevant works. I just want to show that it turns out that the efficiency data we got here is one of the best in its category. I mean, when compared to some other silicon-based multi-junction solar cells. The closest one is this from a Japanese group with a 21.2%. They have a monolistic growth method by growing aluminum gallium arsenide on silicon. So as a conclusion, I have introduced a fabrication method to achieve a 3-5 on silicon multi-junction solar cells without growing materials on a lattice-mismatched substrates. And so this method itself is very simple, and it could be cost-effective, and it can have this ability to scale up. And this is also a fairly reliable process, and we have a cell that can stand up to thermal cycles. We also introduced the areal current matching, and this is a very powerful technique, and we can use this method to achieve current matching for any arbitrary PV material combinations. And some of the future potentials for this project include that we can further reduce the optical loss at the intermediate metal bonding interface. And we could potentially measure this cell at a higher illumination of concentration to get an even better performance. So this is an acknowledgement of some of the institutions and funding agencies that is contributed to this project. Now, I would also like to thank my supervisor, Dr. Rafi Kleiman, for his valuable contributions and inputs into this project. Thank you.